Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're going to do a top 10. The topic of this top 10, Hot Tag Time Machine. Now you may be asking yourself, what the heck does that mean? What is a Hot Tag Time Machine? Obviously it's a play on a hot tag in wrestling and a famous movie. The idea from this came from our good friend Bucky749, who gave a few suggestions and one comment, and they were all good, so I decided to do all of them. The idea is take a wrestler from now, pair him with a wrestler from the past, and make a tag team. Now, I did set some limitations for myself. I'm not going to make any super teams like, say, Hulk Hogan and Brock Lesnar, or Steve Austin and Roman Reigns, or anything like that. This is more tag teams, I think, that would work well together with guys that may or may not have reached their full potential, but I think they might do really great in the tag teams we put together here. So with all that being said, coming in at number 10, Ziggy Dice goes back in time and picks up Eric Embry. If you're not familiar with Eric Embry or Ziggy Dice, both of these guys have a very flamboyant, very gorgeous George style. They're in that lineage of wrestlers, the Adrian Street lineage, the Goldust lineage, where they lean a lot on their flamboyance, and I believe Eric Embry went by the flamboyant one, and Ziggy Dice is outrageous Ziggy Dice. I love Ziggy Dice, and I think he deserves more than he's getting and more of a shine than what he has had. Eric Embry was a fantastic wrestler, most known for what he did in USWA and the dying days of World Class, but he was a great wrestler, and he had a great fire as a babyface, and he was an even better heel. I think the two of these guys together would make a fantastic team, kind of along that lines, keeping with a similar gimmick. And as you can see what I'm trying to do here, keeping guys with similar type gimmicks or styles together, I think they would be perfect together, and I'd love to see them team up. It would be probably one of my favorite teams if they did. Now, coming off of that, our number 9. John Skyler jumps in his time machine and goes back and picks up Sam Houston. Now, obviously, you can see they both have somewhat of a cowboy type gimmick or a country boy type gimmick. John Skyler, I don't know why he hasn't caught on and become a major, huge star in wrestling. The guy has everything you want. He has a great charisma. He has a great look to him. He's a fantastic wrestler. One of the great wrestlers of the last decade or so. He's been someone I thought for the last 10 years is just waiting for an opportunity to break out. Sam Houston is a guy, I think, and I spoke about this on a video I did a couple days ago, who was a little bit before his time. His build and his frame was more of a track star or a basketball player in an era where the heavyweights were built like boxers or built like bodybuilders instead of being built more like a basketball star, which is a lot of what the people are built like today. Think a guy like a Randy Orton or even a Kenny Omega, where they're muscular but they're more slimmed down. They're not big and bulky. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think that his style and his body frame would fit more in this generation than it did in his own. And I think this would be a fantastic tag team, him and Skyler together. I think they'd work perfectly. Now, coming off of that, our number 8. We take Chad Gable, a.k.a. Shorty G, who's had a few different tag partners already. If you're going to go with Chad Gable, he's going to look for a shooter to go with him. Why not give him one of the all-time great shooters, Danny Hodge? I'll be the first to admit, I haven't seen maybe but 5 to 10 Danny Hodge matches. More of this is based on reputation and what I've heard from stories from Jim Ross and other people, mostly Jim Ross because he's Jim Ross's idol. But I've heard stories from other people, and the matches I have seen, the style that he employs, it's much like a William Regal style, much like Chad Gable, Kurt Angle. He has that, both of the guys have that air that air of realism to them, and both of them have a very similar mat-based, pure wrestling style that I think would complement each other, kind of like a Team Angle or Alpha Academy when they were, or not Alpha Academy. Well, Alpha Academy is a good example, but American Alpha. Hey, you get what I'm saying. They're the two of them together. I think with that very similar style, and Chad Gable just being like a new generation version of Danny Hodge, I think that would be perfect team for each other. I think they would work very well. They'd be a great team, or a great team to go up against a lot of the high-flying teams. They could slow the pace down. I think they're both very entertaining from what I've seen of Danny Hodge. I've seen a lot of his I've seen him in interviews, which he was very entertaining, a very compelling man. So I just think they work perfect together. Now our number 7. Probably one of the stranger pairings on here on paper, but it'll make sense when I explain it to you. Sonata goes back in a time machine, picks up Coco Beware. Now, a lot of you people say Coco, he's a name that I hear most when people say people not deserving of being in the WWE Hall of Fame. But Coco was actually a very good wrestler. He couldn't help that his gimmick was in the era that they were trying to go for them cartoon gimmicks. And even before that, he was a fantastic wrestler, a fantastic heel. He did a lot of really good stuff. The reason I'm going with both of these guys is purely on their drop kicks. I think they both have fantastic drop kicks. I'd love to see them go back to using a double drop kick as a finisher. And I think Sonata, who's had some strangeness to him, is just strange enough that him and Coco Beware would meld together perfectly. Kind of like Coco and Owen Hart had a really good tag team in High Energy. Yeah, they looked goofy, even in the time they looked goofy, but I think they worked well together, and I think he would do the same thing for a guy like Sonata, who has had some success in the tag division in New Japan with his tag team partner Evil, and then recently with Naito. But I think this would be a really good team, a really interesting and fun team, in my opinion. Now, coming off of that, our number 6. We get the captain, Shawn Dean, picking up the Patriot. And this is going to be obvious. Shawn Dean's a military man. I could have went with someone like Sergeant Slaughter, like Don Cornoodle, someone obvious that's Corporal Kirshner. But I think the Patriot would more fit in with the style that Shawn Dean has than any of those guys would. And I think I know a lot of it is recency bias to Patriot since he passed away recently. Has been a lot of stuff, and he's been brought up a lot. It's someone that, I always enjoyed. I thought his matches with Bret Hart were some of the best of that era. I thought his team with Buff Bagwell was really good. I really liked the Patriot, and I want to say it was Global Wrestling that he was in, and I thought he was awesome there. I really think the Patriot would work really well, especially with Shawn Dean, who I think if you watch not Being Elite, but the Sammy Guevara vlogs, Shawn Dean has a character and a gimmick and a charisma that really hasn't been pulled out of him on TV yet. And I think the Patriot would help him get there. I think they would work perfectly together as an American, pro-America team, which there have been plenty of during the history of wrestling. So keep that tradition on. Patriot and Shawn Dean, I think they'd be an awesome team. Now, coming off of that, our number 5. We got Brock Anderson, the son of Arn Anderson, kayfabe nephew of Ole, kayfabe nephew of Gene, goes and picks up one of his kayfabe cousins, C.W. Anderson. I kind of wanted to stay away from Ole or Arn or even Gene Anderson because of the obvious connection, but I think CW would be a perfect tag team partner. Another guy, much like I said with Coco Beware, much like I said with Eric Embry, a lot of these guys, that doesn't really get the respect he deserved. Like, C.W. Anderson was a fantastic wrestler. I think the combination of him and Brock Anderson, he could help Brock transfer from being kind of green to being being a guy that's a trusted and well leaned upon vet, all while learning off of CW. I think CW Anderson would give you a kind of like an FTR type team, where I think there would be no BS, just straight up wrestling. Much like the team of Gable and Hodge, I think the Andersons, CW and Brock, would work very well, be a great updated version of the Minnesota Wrecking Crew. We could even call them the Carolina Wrecking Crew, because Brock was born in Carolina, and so was in the Carolinas, and so was C.W. Anderson. So there's that. To me, I think it keeps the Anderson name going. Brock is the first actual Anderson that's related to another Anderson, so it'd be kind of cool if they kept the kayfabe family going on television, in my opinion. Now, coming off of that, our number 4. Cedric Alexander jumps in his time machine, picks up Tito Santana. I've mentioned it before when I talked about Strike Force recently, how much Tito Santana was, how much better he would have fit in this generation. Not that he wasn't a fantastic fit, and he's not a Hall of Fame wrestler. He definitely is. But I think that Tito Santana in this generation would be even more over and more of your quintessential babyface, which I think Cedric Alexander works better as a babyface than he does a heel. He has that kind of personality that people just gravitate to and want to get behind and want to cheer for. Same with Tito Santana. I think this would be another fantastic pairing, both with kind of similar styles. Both can do a little bit of flying. Both can do a little bit of mat wrestling. Both have that charisma where fans just want to get behind them. They don't even need to do promos and the fans are cheering for them. I would enjoy seeing these two tag together, and I think they would make a fantastic pairing. Now, coming off of that, our number 3, Jungle Boy grabs his time machine, and yes, he is, at the time of this recording, a tag team champion with Luchasaurus, but he goes back into time, and he picks up Kevin Von Erich, one of the legendary Von Erich family. Kevin Von Erich, kind of, and all of the Von Erichs really, their impact, a lot of people talk about their impact on wrestling, but when you bring up their impact, you also have to bring up the tragedy. Kevin is the one that survived through all the tragedy, and when I was younger, and when I would see world-class championship wrestling, and videos of Kevin and Kerry, and David, and all of them, to me, Kevin was the one I liked the best. Kerry had the best body. David might have been the most ready to be a world champion, but my favorite was Kevin Von Erich. I thought Kevin was the best of the Von Erich clan. I know a lot of people disagree, and that's fine. It's subjective. Art is subjective, so you may like other people that I don't. But I thought Kevin Von Erich was a perfect tag team, or a perfect wrestler. I think him and Jungle Boy being in a team, much like I said with Tito and Cedric, it's two baby faces that the fans just want to get behind. They don't even need a reason to get behind them. I think Kevin Von Erich would help Jungle Boy in his promo style. Kevin Von Erich is a better promo, or was a better promo than Jungle Boy has been so far. Jungle Boy is getting better. Every time he touches the microphone, he gets a little bit better. When he first would do promos, it kind of felt like he was scared, but I feel like he's finally fitting into his role. His confidence is growing, and another way to grow that would be to put him in a great tag team with a great mentor like Kevin Von Erich. Now, coming from that, our number 2. A lot of these teams I mentioned are on the face side of the coin. Some of them can work well as a heel team. Eric Embry, Ziggy Dice, the Hodge and Gable team. Patriot and Shawn Dean actually would work as a really good heel team. Most of these guys, they're all fantastic wrestlers, so they could work either. But here is probably the most surefire, definite heel team on number 2. Evil goes back in time and picks up the Purple Haze. And you got Evil, you got the House of Torture, which is doing some really fun stuff over in New Japan. Evil's people are kind of growing sour on Evil a little bit. I think he leans more into his Prince of Darkness Evil character brings out the Purple Haze, formerly of Kevin Sullivan's army, and I think it's just a fantastic pair. To me, if you haven't seen any of the Kevin Sullivan stuff from Florida Championship Wrestling, it doesn't. Some of it doesn't age really well. Some of it's kind of hokey, but I think it was so good. And the Purple Haze, Mark Lewin, I thought he was such an integral part of that. He was a big, menacing character who you really believed was this monster that came out of the sea. I mean, that's how they brought him. He came from the ocean. This, to me, I think this would be a perfect way for Evil to lean on his evil side and bring one of the most evil characters. They can even bring in Sullivan as their manager and do a new Army of Darkness type thing and keep it going forward. I think the two would work very well together. Purple Haze had a really, really fun style to watch, more of a brawling style, but it was a fun style to watch. And I think he would be a guy that would fit really well in New Japan as well. So to me, I think they'd be a perfect team for each other. Now, coming off of that, before we get into number one, we do a little thing here on our top 10s called the best of the rest. Basically things that were considered for the list, but for whatever reason didn't quite make it. Our first up on the best of the rest, Tajiri and Angelico. I love Angelico. I liked him ever since I first seen him in Lucha Underground. I think he's an amazing talent. I know he's a little bit on the injury-prone side. I don't think he's quite got a fair shake in AEW. But I do like his style. Another guy I really like is Tajiri. Now, if you notice, a lot of these guys that I've mentioned have similar styles, where these guys not so much. Tajiri's more of a striker, and Angelico's more of a high flyer. I think that Tajiri would bring the seriousness to the group, where Angelico at times, with his tag team with Jack Evans, and even sometimes in Lucha Underground, well, especially in Lucha Underground, he felt like he was a little bit more of a comedy character, which Tajiri can do really well as well. But I think Tajiri brings a seriousness to this group, which would have the aerial and the striking combat all balled into one. And I think they'd be a fantastic team. I think they'd work well in like the New Japan's juniors tag department, and especially with the style of tag team wrestling that's popular today, I think they would be a great team. Now, coming from that, Iceman King Parsons and the wrestler known as Mace. I think it's Brendan Williams is what we first known him as. Dio Madden, he's been gone by. They've kind of tried to make everything stick with this guy. I think there's something there. I think he's got a talent. I think I've seen him in NXT before he was even on TV, and I thought there was something talented about him. Iceman King Parsons, another guy from the world-class era towards the end, who had a fantastic gimmick. He worked well as a face and a heel. I think he would be a guy that could bring the best out of Mace. I think him and Mace would make a fantastic team, especially with how big Mace is. Iceman King Parsons could play that wimpy, hide behind the bigger guy role, kind of like Shawn Michaels did with Diesel, kind of like a lot of people have done. Triple H did it with Chyna. I think this would be a perfect pairing of a style like that, the bigger guy with the smaller, more cocky heel. I think it would work fine, and I'd love to see them team up. Now, last but not least, on our best of the rest, we go to the land down under. We get a New Zealand and Australia connection, where we have Tony Gurria and Jonah, formerly Jonah Rock, formerly Bronson Reed. Tony Gurria is a guy that most of the people of my generation know as the guy that came down to the ring to break up fights, or know as an agent from backstage. I actually didn't know much about Tony Gurria until about 25 years into watching wrestling, where I had the ability to watch wrestling that came from the 70s, and I really got to see Tony Gurria, and I got to see how good he really was. And he was kind of known as a tag team specialist. I believe he had 4 different partners that won the WWF Tag Team Championship with. I know him and Martel won, him and Zbyszko, I want to say him and Haystacks Calhoun, and there's another one that's slipping my mind right now. But I know he won with a different variety of people. Funny as it is, it's been reported that because he had tattoos, he didn't get more of a push than he did. But I think he was one of the best wrestlers of that decade. Him and Jonah, I think, is amazing. To me, Jonah is this generation's version of Bam Bam Bigelow. A big guy that can fly around and do absolutely anything. I think they would pair very well. I think they would work so perfectly together. Tony Gurria kind of setting the pace, being the face in peril when they're a face tag team. And I think they'd work great as a heel team as well. Jonah being the bruiser that comes in and saves the day. I think it'd be perfect. I like them as a team. With all that being said, before we get to our number 1, make sure you like the video, comment, share, and if you haven't, if you're new to the show, hit the subscribe button if you like what you're seeing. I definitely love to have you come back and see some more. With that, we're going into our number 1 pick from the Hot Tag Time Machine. We have Powerhouse Willy Hobbs going back in time and picking up Dr. Death Steve Williams. When I watch Will Hobbs, there's 2 things that he reminds me of. 1, the gear reminds me of Harlem Heat, which I know is probably on purpose. But 2, his style reminds me of Dr. Death Steve Williams a lot. And I think Will Hobbs, Powerhouse Hobbs, I think he's someone that you could build into being a world champion. I would believe him beating Adam Page right now, and at the time of this recording, Adam Page is the AEW champion. I believe Hobbs could beat him right now, and no one would bat an eye. He's that believable of a character. He has an air of credibility that you feel like he's a real, actual badass, and so did Dr. Death Steve Williams. There have been countless stories about Dr. Death being one of the toughest wrestlers in the history of wrestling. His tag team with Terry Bam Bam Gordy is one of my favorite runs as a tag team ever. The Miracle Violence Connection. They're so great together. What they did in Japan, oh my God, they were amazing. If you haven't seen it, I definitely say go look it up. But I do definitely think him and Hobbs have such a similar style. I think they would wreak havoc much like him and Gordy did in the 90s. They would wreak havoc now. I love this idea for a team, and this is, to me, this is the first team I thought of. The first thing that started spinning in my mind when I thought of this concept. So that's why I believe they're number 1. I think they'd be the best. If all of these teams existed, I think they would be the most successful out of all of them. Now, with all that being said, again, please like, comment, share, subscribe if you haven't. And if you watch this long, I know you're enjoying the content, or at least you want to see how wrong I am about these things. Let me know what you think. Let's go ahead and put in the comments. How about this? Instead of one thing in the comments, let's put your favorite. Let's see what you would think. You pick a person from now and a person from the past as a tag team. You don't have to constrain what I do. If you want to do Roman Reigns and The Rock, go ahead. Let me know you watch this far. Give me a person from now and a person from the past you'd like to see in as a tag team in the comments. Again, like, comment, share. Please subscribe. I definitely would appreciate that. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another Heel Heat Top 10.